All right, we are here on Sunday noon when Semagulu Museum shares its rich information on Uganda's history. To just keep you informed, we are back again. Today, we are going to discuss a very central topic. Today's central topic is about something people tend to ignore. That is Bunyoro Kingdom. Why am I sure people ignore Bunyoro Kingdom? It is largely absent from our syllabus. Bunyoro is almost forgotten in terms of our rich history, and yet, as we are going to see, it was once a superpower. My name is John from Peba, and I'm here to share with you some very interesting part of our history. So, if we can proceed, this is our topic. Why did Bunyoro why why did it lose its superpower status? Okay, that is our discussion today, and this is what I mean. If you see those red arrows there, all that there was no Busoga. All of that was Bunyoro. Now look how small it is today. We have to study how such a superpower lost its supremacy. And from this, we're going to learn. There will be some learning lessons. You're big today, you may not be big tomorrow. Why? I think it's the same reasoning. NRM is here today. Will it be in 500 years? If we learn from the past, we avoid the mistakes that were done in the past so as to stay around forever. So first, I'm going to take some time to confirm to you that Bunyoro was a superpower. All right? Then we'll see the early problems. Every superpower gets a few problems. But still, Bunyoro showed the world that they were still in control. The problem started coming internally. A fish starts rotting from itself, from its head, not from the lake in which it is. So we're going to see the internal. This question was common. Explain how Bunyoro lost its, and then we used to just cram of this, lack of that. Here I'm going to show you actual things that actually happened. Actual things. How explain how Bunyoro lost its counties. Then later on, Bunyoro got savior. I'll be showing that savior. Was it too late for that savior? We can learn from Bunyoro. Now, in that picture, you can see that from the word go, they sorted out problems that some kingdoms up to today, like Busha, have not yet sorted out. They sorted out their governance issue. There was a test which was done. There were 3 kids, Kahuma, Kairu, Kakama, and their fathers were king, and they agreed. Now, Kakama's descendants become the kings. They become the kings. Okay? And there's no debate about that. on animal husbandry, and there was no debate about that. You can see their mother there in picture. There were no coups, no elections. Everything was sorted out. Today we are in elections. I want to see, I'm seeing here my brother tuning in. There were no elections. There was no hullabaloo of elections. And divided labor, that you, this is what you'll do, that you, that's what you'll do. So they had no unemployment. There were no youth that were unemployed. If you are under Kairu, agriculture. Under Kahuma, let's go and start doing things with cows. And we'll see later that this specialization strengthened them. So Bunyoro had a solid foundation. My friends from Busoga, you've not reached this stage yet. When your king passes on, there was, which chief. These guys are ahead of perspective. Now look at this picture here. The Bunyoro, they knew that the next king was a son or a brother of the outgoing king. There was no debate about that. Here you're seeing one of the early Bakama of Kitara, the seventh king of the Batembuzi. His name was Nyamuhanga. He had no kids. He called all his diviners. They failed to find an answer. He got a house girl. By the time a king, things are terrible. But he had to do it so as to get the next king, who was called Ncha I. So they had to find heirs at all costs. These guys were united. There were many sub groups. Gangaizi, Banyabwiru, Bagaya, Bachope, but they're all united. Mbere Mwenda, meaning, hey, you, my brother, we are together in this Kitara kingdom. Hey, don't. So that unity from the beginning helped to prosper. You are men. Some of you go and stay up there near Choli Lango, that is still our kingdom. Some of you go to Congo, that is still part of. Go to, you have your county there. Kahuma, go to Mwenge County, and that is where you live with all the Babitos, the Babitokatis, and then these guys had an industrial area. The Banyoro were too smart, my friends. They had an industrial area in Bugangaizi. In that industrial area, that's where they did iron working, they did pottery. They also put their king's tomb. So you can see a Bunyoro that is organized from the beginning perfectly. All right? Governance. They were a huge kingdom, but in all of these counties which they had, they placed leaders, rulers, who are ruling on behalf of the Omukama. In Busoga, they put Ntembe, who was now there leading the Busoga Center on behalf of the Mukama. And they sent us one of their own, Ntege Walusimbi. If you're from the Fube clan, you're a Bunyoro. You came from Bunyoro under this guy. Omukama Ishaza. Omukama Ishaza right there. He sent a guy called Choya, but Choya was too old, so he put Ntege Walusimbi. In Karokarunji, my friends from Barara, how are you, Sarah Kajingo? I can see you're watching. There was no Ankole at this time. They called it Karokarunji because it had great grazing areas. And this Bunyoro, they sent a guy called Machumulinda to that. So you can see that this LC1, LC2, LC3, we could count as Masaza. If you didn't know, who was the last king of the Bachwezi. Okay, now here the Bachwezi kings, you can see their history is all well documented. They had no issues, all these kings, apart from Omukama Ntonzi, who had a few power people, complaining here, but he easily quashed those protests. So the word Batembuzi actually means harbingers, which means simply pioneers. These guys were successful, but they had to go when Ishaza went to meet the Bachwezi underground, and he was not intelligent enough to find his way back. And Bukuku takes over, his gatekeeper, but we see later that Bukuku didn't live long. That was a coup, and their constitution, the Bunyoro unwritten constitution, was very clear. You can't stage a coup, you can't overthrow the royals. So when Bukuku assumed power, you know what happened later. His daughter, the beautiful one-breasted, one-eyed, blue-eyed woman, if you go to Fort Poto, there's a place called Maberega Jinamwiru. Jinamwiru found Isimbwa. Isimbwa was a son to Ishaza, and they got a baby called Ndahura. The word Ndahura, Ndahura, it is an expression of surprise. Bukuku was so shocked. He said, this woman, whom I cut her breast, I have removed her eye. How does she get men? How did she get pregnant? That is what the word Ndahura means. He was so shocked, so the boy was called Ndahura. Here you can see Bunyoro, iron smelting. That is like 1,000 years ago. And in iron smelting, what advantage did they get? Those spears. They could arm their army to fight anybody. Everyone knew how to make spears. Every home had spears. Now, the Baganda at that time hadn't grabbed this tool, so they couldn't fight. They had no weapons. They were not different from Stone Age men that had stones. These guys had spears because of their technology of iron making. So you can see that by 1 AD, 1 AD, the whole of southern Uganda was actually Bunyoro. All right? There's no Buganda on that map. There's no Ankole on that map. There's no Busogo on that map. There's no Singo. It's called Isingo at that time. There's no Acholi. The Acholi were under Bunyoro because they called their area Gani. If you can look at it up there. That was Acholi for you. There was no Rwanda. Rwanda was Bunyoro, my friends. Part of Congo, Ituri Forest, a place called where Kabarega came from, the Balega, they were all under Bunyoro, and everything seemed okay. Now look at this woman here. You've probably never heard of her before, but I'm bringing you a book soon called The 50 Women That Built, the 50 Women Who Built Uganda. It's coming out in about 2 weeks. You will see some of these strong women that nobody knows about. This woman here is Queen Nyabugondo. Queen Nyabugondo was from the guys in animal husbandry under, I think, Kahuma. And she was a scientist. She sat down and went into breeding and came up with this Enyambo breed. Today, this is probably one of the most commercially viable local breeds, the Nyambo breed. It can sustain the tropical disease. And this woman was busy breeding. That's like 1,000 years ago. So that is how superior these Bunyoro were in science. All right, so as we end the term of the Batembuzi, we have seen that they were on a solid foundation. They had political stability. They had one language, There was no land grabbing. These land grabbers are a recent addition to our vocabulary. They quashed internal rebellion. There was no joking. There was no people power. You either obey or you're out. Okay? So don't spend your time politicking. Spend your time either iron making or doing other things. Like I've just shown you Kunya Bugondo was there science breeding. We've discussed how they decentralized power to create a Mashaza. And by that time, look how many counties they had. They had Muawa, which is now Buganda. They had Karokarunji, all right, Karokarunji, which is now Ankole. They had Busoga, they had Bugangaizi, the industrial area, they had Mwenge. Now, when I say Mwenge, don't think I'm talking about alcohol. That was the seat of power, the Buckingham, where all their queens, all their kings, Ababito, Navabitokati, in all of this Majesta Mazma, that is where they were. They had Buruli, Bugaya, Bugoma, Bugungu, Chope, Bulega, that is in Congo. Buera, when I say Buera, I'm talking about Budu. Masaka is a word which is not in Luganda, my friends. It is in those Western languages, okay? And they had Busiri. So you can see that they had a strong foundation even before the Bachwezi came. The Bunyoro had hospital for smallpox. Oh, this Bunyoro, I wish they could allow me to build their museum. That place which we call Nakaima's place in Mubende was a smallpox hospital. You see, Ndahura, whom I've just told you about, the first king of the Bachwezi, knew how to treat smallpox, and it was the COVID of that time. Okay? So he set up a place, and people would come from Buganda, from Wawa, from everywhere to treat smallpox. Today, it is a historical site in Buganda under Nakaima. Nakaima is Nyakahuma, if you didn't know. But they had hospitals, these guys. They were not joking. Now look at what the Bachwezi looked like. The Bachwezi were not black like me. No. The Bachwezi were light-skinned. They were handsome, beautiful. There you can see Ndahura, Omukama Ndahura, there. And there you can see Nyakahuma. You know, they were light-skinned. These guys came from Ethiopia and beyond. I think they came from Greece. Because the word Egypt and the word Ethiopia, they mean black. Okay? In those Latin languages, they mean black. These guys were not black. It is therefore possible that these Bachwezi must have come from Greece or around there, and therefore they on thinking they're at the same level with the Plato, Aristotle in thinking. So when they came here, people had never seen coming to slay Walusimbi in Tege, who was a chief ruling on behalf of Omukama Ishaza. Most probably, Walusimbi was not submitting taxes, and Ndahura came and killed him. You can see the first royal throne of Buganda called Samaguru there on the floor. He left it because these guys introduced regalia. They didn't expect that, well, if you were serious, that was your royal throne. So there they have slain our man. If you're from the Fumbe clan, that is your founder there on the ground. And that is Ndahura, at war. Okay. Many people have told you that the Bachwezi were supernatural. Trust me, there's no such thing. They were human beings. But they were superior in which ways? They strengthened central governance and the issue of Masaza. They continued with that hereditary succession. And in fact, they had, I think, 2 or 3 kings. Okay? They introduced reed palaces, okay, which now Buganda has copied. They introduced regalia. Regalia is about branding your kingdom. Okay? They came with a lion as their symbol. We shall see later when Buganda copied the lion. That word, a lion is a ntari, we copied that from them. They had a superior army, as I've told you. They were good at iron making. Socially, they were smarter. They grew cotton and they would weave and make things like bandages, some basic cloth. They could make cotton wool to nurse their soldiers. They had doctors. I've just shown you their hospital, smallpox. They had cows, superior cows. I've just showed you that breed. So they were not moving around barefoot. No, they had cowhide sandals. Some people today don't wear shoes. But 800 years ago, there were people who were wearing cowhide sandals. Now, they modernized grass-thatched. All these grass-thatched houses you see, that is the work of these guys. And they put nice tiles there on the floor made of cow dung. Okay, they didn't have tiles, but they put cow dung on the floor. They introduced interior decor, and then they modernized entertainment, bringing omweso, this game, wrestling, okay, massage. These guys, Bunyoro, also introduced body massage. Economically, I've told you they grew cotton, they introduced coffee, they knew about butter trade, okay, they had ironsmiths to make spears, and they made hoes. They made hoes so they could dig and plant. I think when these hoes came, the happiest person must have been Cairo, who then started to plant late sorghum extensively. Now, meanwhile, with all that superiority in Bunyoro, what was happening here in central Uganda and Buganda? First of all, there was no Buganda at that time, okay? There was a place called Muwawa. Muwawa is a Runyoro word which means something which is insignificant and small. If you remember in school, when you wrote rubbish, I remember nowadays in SMARC, you wrote history, and I was privileged to go to the same school with Muhozi and others. When you wrote something and it was rubbish, people would say, oh, you have written Muwawa. This place was Muwawa, small and insignificant, without a succession policy. I mean, whoever had an army somehow took over. There are guys who came from Sese and took over and ruled. I wish I had time, I would show them to you. So without an army, there were no kabakas, there were just chiefs here. And the rulers at that time called Magambo, really. So politically, we were inferior. The Baganda were inferior. Socially, we were weak. We're not even called Baganda by then. We're called Avalasange. Some basic chaps dressed in animal skin. Balasange means you're spending your time hunting enge. Enge is a colobus monkey. And you're hunting it for skin, really, to dress. So you can see where that basic socially. We had only, I think, three counties. Okay, we had here Chadondo, we had Busiro, we had half of Chagwe, we had half of Maokota. And that is how basic we are. We had no hospitals. We were just gambling at that time. We were really gambling. The real hospitals were with the Bunyoro, okay? We had no trade. We had no means to acquire what we didn't have. Other small chaps. What saved these Muwawa clans? Now, you remember in 1966 or 7, Obote thought he had abolished Buganda. You cannot abolish Buganda unless you stop the clans. Buganda is made of clans. It is the clans that make Buganda. Now, Obote didn't understand this, and he thought that by declaring, going to parliament and you speak, now I've abolished Buganda, you think it will go. It won't go that way. It is the clans. And if Buganda can strengthen its clans, ooh la la. Anyway, meanwhile in Buganda, that was the royal throne. They called it Semaguru, and our museum is named after that to remember our past. And you can see the basic agriculture at that time, no hoes but sticks. So the acreage we could do was really basic, okay? Now you need to know that after some time the Bachwezi left. The Bachwezi did not cling to power. When the Bachwezi realized that people were no longer considering them superior, They left instead of staying around to be embarrassed. I think that is the key learning lesson. I don't know for who, but the Bachwezi left. Now, when the Bachwezi left, Buganda was too weak to pounce at that time. So why? Buganda's major strength at that time was this belief. Was this belief? Not of Mwawa at that time. You can say they were Banyuru. They were under. They were called Abalasange, and Abalasange were Bunyoro, really, because they were under Bunyoro, really. So Martin Luther, thank you for asking. He has asked, the people of Mwawa were also Bunyoro. Yes, because they were under Bunyoro, okay? The people of Busoga were Bunyoro because they were under Bunyoro. These were small states ruled by the Baganda, the Mwawa, derived their strength mainly from Lubale, okay? From Lubale, you can see here my representation of what I think Iwanuka looked like. Until when somebody realized that to beat this Banyoro, Lubale alone is not enough. And the Baganda have a saying, Ti Lubale Mbela. You need to be fast, you need to have an army. Now, this is the point. Mr. Bobby Wine, Chagulanyi. Mr. Chagulanyi belongs to a clan, the Mbogo clan. Now, the president of Uganda can invite this man and he'll refuse, probably. I don't know. But should Gajule, the head of the Mbogo clan, call this man and tell him, you come now, this man will appear. So it is this clan system that has saved Buganda, and the biggest punishment here in Buganda was banishment from your clan. It is this clan which saved Buganda. We've discussed how Bunyoro was supreme and how Mwawa was indeed insignificant. I've told you all of these things. You can see how the Bachu Karunji. Now something started to happen. When Ishaza got lost, they started getting their first problems. Bukuku usurped power. And this woman, whom you will know in my book, called Kojere, seceded. She formed her own kingdom called Busongora. You can see Busongora. This woman was so wealthy. You see that Queen Elizabeth National Park? All of that was her grazing ground for her cows. She was so strong. You'll read about her in my book. In my book called 50 Women Who Built Uganda. There came this guy, man. If you're a Munyankole, this guy was called Ruhinda. Ruhinda said, no way, we guys are going. And he went and formed the kingdom there in Karokarunji. This is Ruhinda, the first Mugabe. Said, no, me, you're younger, I've gone. So we can see now Bunyoro is starting to get problems. People are running away. You know the story of Gipiri and Labongo. You know how Labongo, the elephant and all that. Now after the MLA, Labongo came down to Bunyoro during that time. It is not true that the Luo captured Bunyoro. No. They were so weak to mess with the Bunyoro. They just walked in and settled while the Bachwezi were leaving. Now, as the Bachwezi were leaving, they got time to impregnate these Luo girls. They were new, they were black, they were subordinate, they were strong. So Chomia, Chomia was a son to Isimba. Chomia was actually a stepbrother to Ndahura. Quickly, he impregnates Labongo's daughter, Nyatoro. And the one, this Babito, it came from that tree really where they stayed, the Bito tree, that huge Bito tree. I don't know if it still exists. So the Luos come in now, and look at what's happening. The Bachwezi are leaving. They are gentlemen, they don't want to overstay. Busongora is seceding. Ruhinda is seceding, forming Karokarunji. But these Buganda, my friends here in Buganda, we are so weak at that time, we are still paying taxes, Vambi. We are still paying taxes. And that is when this guy comes in. The guy I want to show you is Singoma, Rukidi, Mpuga. He's called Rukidi because he was born across that lake, Choga. He was born in Rukidi. He was multicolored, so they called him Mpuga. And he just acceded to the throne. He didn't fight. No, some people say he fought and captured them, but no, he just acceded to the throne, having sacrificed a boy, baby boy in some river. If you have never seen Rukidi, Isingoma, Mpuga, and you think he was a lousy chap, look closely. This is Isingoma, Rukidi, Mpuga. You can see he already had a complicated sword there. You know, these guys were not simple. So Isingoma rules and he finds all of these counties under him. Buera, Bulemezi, all of these were counties under him. Can you imagine? You know? Now, because he did not conquer, he was such a peaceful guy. Now, this is the history of how Buganda and Bunyoro connects. Ishaza, underground, and Nyamata, they produce Isimbwa. Isimbwa and Nina Mwiru, who is Bukuku's daughter, they produced Ndahura. But at the same time, when Isimbwa was underground, he had a Muchwezi girl called Nyabirio, very beautiful. And they produced Chomia. Meanwhile, Labongo is busy with his daughter Nyatoro. So you see, Chomia and Nyatoro, they produce many kids, including Rukidi Mpuga and another one called Kato. Now, my friends in Bunyoro, this Kato is not Kato Chimera. It can't be. It was too early for Kato Chimera to arise. Okay? This is another Kato altogether. Now, the Bachos were disappearing. Some people, people have been told that they disappeared. No, they just shifted elsewhere. I have proof that some of them went to Sese. And in Sese, Chomia and Nyatuoro must have taken on new names. We are still searching, but most likely Nyatuoro and Chomia must have become Kagona and Namukana because they are the parents to Kato. Kato, who later becomes king to the first king there. So Isingoma goes to the throne. Ruhinda has broken away. When Isingoma comes in, he shifts his capital from Buera. He doesn't want to be near Ruhinda. This man wants peace. Okay, but he's a Muchwezi. His dad is a Toto Muchwezi, only that his mother is Luo. You know? So everything settles down peacefully. And Isingoma, we are going to see here, Isingoma helped us, or helped his brother. I think Isingoma was a brother Kato. But Kato wanted to take over Mwawa. So Isingoma told him to go to where the Bachwezi come from, Ethiopia, to master war. Okay? Now we see Kato here jumping on his horse after about 10 years of military training and coming back. You can see there, he holds a sword. He doesn't hold a spear. And if you know that place called Kitara on Entebbe Road, that is where he found Bembam Sota to start fighting. And it's called Kitara because this sword is called a Kitara. One day